This is about emission problems on the Porsches, the Boxster and 911. But this is the Porsche Boxster 2001 Boxster S underneath all this. And your problems won't be half as complicated as mine because you didn't move anything like me. So I took this emissions canister that was in the wheel well and I moved it to here. Also with the two sensors, this mechanism is moved, and then I connected all back up. It was fine for probably two. If you hear that little solenoid clicking, then you know that's not the problem. If you don't hear it clicking when you push that little flapper all the way open with your finger in the fuel fill tube, then it's either one of two things. It's either that solenoid is bad, which is pretty expensive, $80 some, just two of them. It's one of them. Or it's this little wire that runs alongside that fill tube, and that's like $12.95. And surprisingly, that was my problem. It was that little thing, that little wire is so basic and generic you wouldn't think it does anything, but it definitely fixed my problem when I replaced it. So that's the first thing. No matter what everybody on the internet says, the first thing I would do is take the gas cap off, push that little flap in, and listen for that clicking noise. Every time you push that flapper open, I think it's like 90%. Just push it all the way open with your finger. You should hear that little solenoid click. That'll focus your effort in them two possible broken items: solenoid or that little wire that runs alongside the fill tube. Not troubleshooting all these other hoses and all this other connections. And the interesting thing about that is sometimes some codes that you get on cars for the trouble codes, they can mislead you because they're so generic. Mine had a minor leak and a major leak. Well, obviously if you have a major leak, you're going to get the other code for a minor leak. It seemed like you're going to get it back to back, and I always get those together for that issue. Every time I reset it, it would come back, both of them, which kind of makes sense. So I think that wasn't opener properly or something, or it was stuck open sometimes or stuck closed all the time, and now it doesn't do any of that problem. I took it the other day and I filled up the tank with fuel. No fuel splashing back up the tube, so that's a big relief. The other thing, I put 23 millimeter spacers on this, on the rear, to bring the wheels out, and I guess it's kind of odd to do it now after I had custom wheels made. Maybe it was a screw up on my part, I can't remember if they couldn't make them even more of an offset, but it's pretty much, if you pay for it, they can make them pretty much anything you want. But these are pretty good ones. They have little two set screws in there, hold this on there, and they just give you the longer bolts, so you don't have to go fumbling around online looking for some other Porsche model with longer bolts. It came in the kit. It's not the ones where the bolts are sticking out of there like a lot of the American cars. This reminds me of like an old Volkswagen Bug, where it doesn't have studs sticking out. I guess it's a German thing. I don't know what the logic behind all that is. But when you put the wheel on, it sits on here, so it's just as easy to do with the stud sticking out when you mount the wheel. Doesn't make it harder. I wanted to put them on the front, not that much, maybe 12 or so millimeter. But the problem is when I turn the wheel, the front of the tire hits the radiator. I already moved the radiator once. I moved it a lot, angled it and moved it forward because these are 19-inch wheels and the offset and all that. It really hit the wheel bad or really hit the radiator bad when I turned the wheel. So that's been resolved, but I can't go offset and bring it out even though I really want to. Because I'd have to go in there and move the radiator more, and I don't want to move the radiator more because it's at the point where it's going to start distorting or kinking the hoses. It's going to the radiator, the angle I moved it. So I guess that's all for now. I know a lot of other people also changed to 996 intake and bigger tubes and all that and that kind of stuff, but it's like a nightmare when you do stuff like that in California, and for smog. I mean, you'd have to swap it all back. The problem is when I registered this car, they didn't let me do smog exempt like the last car I built, which is a real downside this time around because you can't fumble around too much with the engine, airbox and all that kind of stuff, because it'll fail the visual for smog check. And the reason being is because the chassis, the engine and transmission were all in a production year vehicle. It wasn't like I took another engine and put it in this chassis. If I did that, I might have got away with them doing a smog exempt. And a lot more stuff you can do, but maybe it's a good thing because when you start modifying everything on a Porsche, it'll nickel and dime you to death. And if the thing runs good, which it does run really good, why mess with it? I'm not taking it to the Indy 500. And it is what it is. It's a car I built. The other thing I noticed when I lift this car up, and I don't know if it's just turning when I lift the car, but these turn here like this. What I have to see about this time is when I put the wheels back on and drop it down, are these turning or are these always turned? It probably won't hurt anything, but it kind of bothers me. So I think then this next time when I put the wheels on and drop it down on this pedestal thing here I built, because the car is too low to get on the lift, I'm going to see if these things straighten back out. If not, then I'm going to turn them a little bit on that swivels. But this end's turned a little bit and this end's straight, so if I turn that in too much, it's going to throw this one off. The other side, they're both ends of these are crooked. So definitely I think it needs turned. The other thing is I replaced the axles. These are a lot fatter, beefier ones than the stock ones. I don't think the stock ones are going to break. I think any time they break or anything, it's the CV joint. So I'm not sure why they went fatter, but hey, it works fine and everything. I should probably check the tightness of those again. It's been about 2 years since I replaced those. So I replaced the coil packs a month or so back with the spark plugs. 6 coil packs, 3 on each side, and they're real easy to get to horizontally here. It's a Boxster engine. I never did the IMS. Has 95,000 miles on it. I do have a magnetic oil plug, and I don't drive it like Miss Daisy, so I drive it pretty hard. And I think that probably helps it maybe. A lot of times when you drive it too easy, a lot of people complain that's when they had the problem. But every time I replace the oil, it's only been twice now, but the magnetic oil plug, there's no metal shavings or anything in that attached to that plug. And also I set off the oil to get inspected, and they say everything looks good. So I just keep my fingers crossed. I mean, that's a huge job. A lot of people do it when they change the clutch at the same time. Why not when you're in there? But this is an automatic. And so there's no reason for me to go in there with the transmission if I don't have to. No clutch for me to change. The big thing is I wanted the automatic because the Tiptronic. I'm just tired of the shifting and all that. And you can drive this like a stick shift if you really wanted to. But yeah, it's not the same. It doesn't have a clutch pedal. But all the new cars like that, it seems like there's very few ones, sports cars now, that are stick shift, and people seem like they go crazy after them. But the statistics show way less people want stick shifts. You can see with the new Corvette and that, with the stick shifts and all that of new cars, they just don't make as many of them anymore because people don't want them because they're so good at the paddle shifts and all that, and less maintenance on the changing and clutches out. And on the older Corvette, at least, it's a total nightmare to replace that clutch with that torque tube and all that. So I'll put it up in the air. I'll order that part, the bleeder. I'll put this car up in the air, and I'll start to take apart the bracing, aluminum bracing underneath to check the transmission fluid. And I'll go from there. Hopefully that part will come in 2 days or something. and I'll be back on the road. It's just kind of the winter time, if you want to call winter time in California. It's January, so I could still take it out and run it around. It's not even raining much. But that's all I got, folks. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I taught you something about some crazy problems and to save you money and frustration of everybody's always constantly saying the worst problem you have, when it's sometimes an easy fix and less expensive, because nothing's worth it. It's just start throwing a bunch of expensive parts at a car and getting frustrated. And you know, it was probably good for 2 years without any problem. So all of a sudden I have the notorious can't fill up the tank with gas like thousands of others Porsche owners are. So the one thing I figured out is when you push that in, you should hear that one valve clicking. And originally mine would not do that. So it's one of two things. There's not much going on between that and those sensors. So the sensors are bad, or this little part was bad. This is my first suggested part to replace, and the cheapest. I think it was like $15. So that part gets connected to that connector right there, and it runs down the back side of this device here. And so it's laying right along this this filler neck. It slides up in there and just holds it in place when you push this thing, this component back onto that fill tube. And the other thing is, if you don't have yours in a proper position that this thing needs to be oriented, turned, it won't work either when you push in that that little latch to make the and what that's doing, it's opening up the line, the emission line there for the fuel tank. So when you're trying to fill the tank, you're forcing fuel into the tank. So there's air in the tank that's being replaced by fuel. So that air has to go somewhere, and it can't come back up the tube because it's all that fuel's being forced in there. So that when you push this little button in and you put that nozzle in there from a fuel station, it opens up, then allows the air fumes to evacuate out of the tank while you're forcing in the fuel. And I never had that problem until a couple weeks ago. It was the first time I've ever had this problem. I see so many other people have this problem, and that's exactly what my case was. So I think the easiest thing to troubleshoot would not buy all kind of parts and start looking underneath the car for emission lines, because the codes are not always accurate. They'll be saying sometimes there'll be a minor leak or a major leak, and it could send you off in a wild goose chase. The easiest thing is, like I showed you earlier, listen for that clicking noise. That'll trump anything else you have, unless you have multiple problems, but that's pretty much the easiest one to fix. It's amazing that this little simple part here, and I look at it and it doesn't seem like there's much to it, and it doesn't seem like it's broken, but either the connector, something wrong with the connector's not making good contact anymore. I maybe could have reseated it a couple times, but for the price I just replaced it. And what I noticed online, every time people are replacing this component right here, nobody ever talks about the electrical connector. So I don't know if it's on all the years or what year it's on. I know it's on the 2001, obviously, because that's what mine is.
Hello. Hey, you want me to get a mac and cheese for you? It's so good.
GoPro, stop recording. If you hear that little solenoid clicking, then you know that's not the problem. If you don't hear it clicking when you push that little flapper all the way open with your finger in the fuel fill tube, then it's either one of two things. It's either that solenoid is bad, which is pretty expensive, $80 some. There's two of them. It's one of them. Or it's this little wire that runs alongside that fill tube, and that's like $12.95. And surprisingly, that was my problem. It was that little thing, that little wire is so basic and generic you wouldn't think it does anything, but it definitely fixed my problem when I replaced it. So That's the first thing, no matter what everybody on the internet says, the first thing I would do is take the gas cap off, push that little flap in, and listen for that clicking noise. Every time you push that flapper open, I think it's like 90%, just push it all the way open with your finger, you should hear that little solenoid click. That'll focus your effort in them two possible broken items, solenoid or that little wire that runs alongside the fill tube. Not troubleshooting all these other hoses and all this other connections. And the interesting thing about that is sometimes some codes that you get on cars for the trouble codes, they can mislead you because they're so generic. Mine had a minor leak and a major leak. Well, obviously, if you have a major leak, you're going to get the other code for a minor leak. It seemed like you're going to get it back to back, and I always get those together for that issue. Every time I reset it, it would come back both of them, which kind of makes sense. So I think that wasn't opener properly or something, or it was stuck open sometimes or stuck closed all the time, and now it doesn't do any of that problem. I took it the other day and I filled up the tank with fuel. No fuel splashing back up the tube, so that's a big relief. The other thing, I put 23 millimeter spacers on this, on the rear, to bring the wheels out, and I guess it's kind of odd to do it now after I had custom wheels made. Maybe it was a screw up on my part, I can't remember. If they couldn't make them even more of an offset, but it's pretty much, if you pay for it, they can make them pretty much anything you want. But these are pretty good ones. They have little two set screws in there, hold this on there, and they just give you the longer bolts, so you don't have to go fumbling around online looking for some other Porsche model with longer bolts. It came in the kit. It's not the ones where the bolts are sticking out of there like a lot of the American cars. This reminds me of like an old Volkswagen Bug, where it doesn't have studs sticking out. I guess it's a German thing. I don't know what the logic behind all that is. But when you put the wheel on, it sits on here, so it's just as easy to do with the stud sticking out when you mount the wheel. Doesn't make it harder. I wanted to put them on the front, not that much, maybe 12 or so millimeter. But the problem is when I turn the wheel, the front of the tire hits the radiator. I already moved the radiator once. I moved it a lot, angled it and moved it forward because these are 19-inch wheels and the offset and all that. It really hit the wheel bad or really hit the radiator bad when I turned the wheel. So that's been resolved, but I can't go offset and bring it out even though I really want to. Because I'd have to go in there and move the radiator more, and I don't want to move the radiator more because that's at the point where it's going to start distorting or kinking the hoses. It's going to the radiator, the angle I moved it. So I guess that's all for now. I know a lot of other people also changed to 996 intake and bigger tubes and all that and that kind of stuff, but it's like a nightmare when you do stuff like that in California, and for smog, I mean, you'd have to swap it all back. The problem is when I registered this car, they didn't let me do smog exempt like the last car I built, which is a real downside this time around because you can't fumble around too much with the engine, airbox and all that kind of stuff, because it'll fail the visual for smog check. And the reason being is because the chassis, the engine and transmission were all in a production year vehicle. It wasn't like I took another engine and put it in this chassis. If I did that, I might have got away with them doing a smog exempt. And a lot more stuff you can do, but maybe it's a good thing because when you start modifying everything on a Porsche, it'll nickel and dime you to death. And if the thing runs good, which it does run really good, why mess with it? I'm not taking it to the Indy 500. And it is what it is. It's a car I built. The other thing I noticed when I lift this car up, and I don't know if it's just turning when I lift the car, but these turn here like this. What I have to see about this time is when I put the wheels back on and drop it down, are these turning or are these always turned? it probably won't hurt anything, but it kind of bothers me. So I think then this next time when I put the wheels on and drop it down on this pedestal thing here I built, because the car's too low to get on the lift, I'm going to see if these things straighten back out. If not, then I'm going to turn them a little bit on that swivels. But this end's turned a little bit and this end's straight, so if I turn that in too much, it's going to throw this one off. The other side, they're both ends of these are crooked. So definitely I think it needs turned. The other thing is I replaced the axles. These are a lot fatter, beefier ones than the stock ones. I don't think the stock ones are going to break. I think any time they break or anything, it's the CV joint. So I'm not sure why they went fatter, but hey, it works fine and everything. I should probably check the tightness of those again. It's been about 2 years since I replaced those. So I replaced the coil packs a month or so back with the spark plugs. 6 coil packs, 3 on each side, and they're real easy to get to horizontally here. It's a Boxster engine. I never did the IMS. Has 95,000 miles on it. I do have a magnetic oil plug, and I don't drive it like Miss Daisy, so I drive it pretty hard. And I think that probably helps it maybe. A lot of times when you drive it too easy, a lot of people complain that's when they had the problem. But every time I replace the oil, it's only been twice now, but the magnetic oil plug, there's no metal shavings or anything in that attached to that plug. And also I set off the oil to get inspected, and they say everything looks good. So I just keep my fingers crossed. I mean, that's a huge job. A lot of people do it when they change the clutch at the same time. Why not when you're in there? But this is automatic. And so there's no reason for me to go in there with the transmission if I don't have to. No clutch for me to change. The big thing is I wanted the automatic because the Tiptronic. I'm just tired of the shifting and all that. And you can drive this like a stick shift if you really wanted to. But yeah, it's not the same. It doesn't have a clutch pedal. But all the new cars like that, it seems like there's very few ones, sports cars now, that are stick shift, and people seem like they go crazy after them. But the statistics show way less people want stick shifts. You can see with the new Corvette and that, with the stick shifts and all that of new cars, they just don't make as many of them anymore because people don't want them because they're so good at the paddle shifts and all that, and less maintenance on the changing clutches out. And on the older Corvette, at least, it's a total nightmare to replace that clutch with that torque tube and all that. So I'll put it up in the air. I'll order that part, the bleeder. I'll put this car up in the air, and I'll start to take apart the bracing, aluminum bracing underneath to check the transmission fluid. And I'll go from there. Hopefully that part will come in 2 days or something, and I'll be back on the road. It's just kind of the winter time, if you want to call winter time in California. It's January, so I could still take it out and run it around. It's not even raining much. But that's all I got, folks. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I taught you something about some crazy problems and to save you money and frustration of everybody's always constantly saying the worst problem you have, when it's sometimes an easy fix and less expensive, because nothing's worth it. It's just start throwing a bunch of expensive parts at a car and getting frustrated. And you know, electrical parts, once you buy them, you can't return them. So you're really in a bad way if you start buying a bunch of solenoids and sensors.